Letting go of control is one of the hardest roadblocks in business. You know you need help, but the thought of handing things over feels risky, even overwhelming. In this episode, I talked to Sarah Groth, a CPA who has worked across large accounting firms, not-for-profits, and general management before starting her own business. Sarah shares how she navigated the leap from doing everything herself to building a system that allowed her to delegate with confidence. If you've ever thought, it's just easier if I do it myself, this conversation will give you a practical way forward.
Welcome to Busting Roadblocks, a podcast where we break down the biggest roadblocks in business and help you clear a path to success. I'm Charteris, your host and the founder of JC Consultancy, where we help businesses remove barriers and unlock their full potential. Today, we get to hear from Sarah Groth, who transforms financial chaos into clarity for small and medium businesses across Australia. Sarah has taken her CPA and worked in large accounting firms, not-for-profits, consultancy, in roles from management accountancy through to financial controller, general management, and now runs her own business. I met Sarah on a business course and was struck by her practical approach to business. And I just knew our community would learn something from you. Sarah, welcome.
Thanks, Janet. Thank you for having me on. It's always exciting to meet with other business owners who are like-minded and share our challenges and our experiences. So yeah, it's great to be here.
Yeah, and experiences, the longer we're in business, the more we seem to have these experiences, but definitely worth sharing. Now, yeah. I know your experience centers around accounting and bookkeeping, but I looked at your LinkedIn profile, also known as the online CV, and from the various testimonials, I can see you have a reputation for being highly organized, skilled, and focused. So when you sent me through the outline of your business experience we're going to discuss today, I was intrigued, and it reminded me of an insight once given to me, which, you know, is always hard to hear. Often the thing we help others with best is sometimes the thing that we neglect in ourselves. Can you see the theme for us? Where are we? Who are we dealing with?
Excellent. Well, look, this was a challenge in my own business, but it's, as you've alluded to, it's a challenge that we see in lots of businesses, I guess. And, you know, quite often we don't always practice what we preach. One of the things that we deal with, obviously, is helping businesses be really clear and systemized around their finances, but it has to extend outside of just finances, and having those systems and processes in your administrative side of your business as well is really helpful. Yeah. And when I first started out, I was a one-man band, which most businesses are, but I was ready to take on, I guess, the next hire or the first hire. And it's a really scary proposition because you've had control of everything. You've done everything yourself.
Letting go.
All of a sudden you've got to let go. And I am now, I wasn't a great delegator. I just didn't think anybody could do it the same way that I did it. Not necessarily as good as I could do it, but just in the same way so that my clients had the same experience. So yes, I was really nervous and knew that I had too much in my head and that I had to get it out of my head and systemize it. So that was the challenge, and I had to broach that and wanted to get something in place before I took anyone on, so they knew nothing different. It was always just this way.
Yeah. So amongst other roadblocks, essentially we're looking at a really big growth period in your company, because I think people forget going from 1 to 2 people with 100% growth, right? And then it changes the whole dynamic in your business. Adding another one, not as big a deal once you've done that first one. And it's really common in small businesses, but I think it's also common in business units. And if you've ever worked for a family-owned company, I can tell you it's very common. You take on a role, but you do a bit of everything. And I always tell people that I do a lot of everything, and some of it is not really great, but I do it because I have to until I get someone who can fill that gap for me. But finding the time to write down everything that you do and the way that you do it to train others is really hard. So it's not just a people resources, I guess, roadblock, it's also a process resource, because it's not like you can pull it off the shelf and say, this is what came out of my head, here's how you do it. So how did you solve it?
Yeah, it's really true, because sometimes that's what stops us from delegating, isn't it? Because we go, it's just quicker to do it myself. But you have to realize that you need to invest that little bit of time up front so that you're saving that time later down the track when you've written those processes and procedures. So what I wanted to do was to make it as easy as possible. And yes, I could have sat in front of my computer and opened a Word document and just thrown down all my thoughts and processes, and that would have been horrid, both for me and for any new hire that had to then trawl through those pages and pages of documents. And there's lots of systems out there that I'm sure lots of business owners have investigated that help with task-driven processes. There's the Mondays and Asanas and Trellos and all of those sort of systems.
But they still take setting up though, Sarah. They're not
They
just...
do.
Yeah.
That's right. Although I think we buy these software subscriptions and just expect them to magically solve all our problems.
Yeah.
So what I did was I really researched a system that could manage those tasks that I needed and wanted to build to give the confidence to be able to hand the work over.
Okay.
But also wanted it to manage our email communications with clients as well. So it was really important to find a tool that could do both.
Yeah.
And I did find one. It's called Carbon. It is actually aimed at accounting and bookkeepers, but having used it for good on seven plus years now, any business could use it. It really doesn't have to be an accounting or bookkeeping firm. So doing a little sales pitch for Carbon here, but one of the beauties of it was it creates a system where you can create jobs. So I knew exactly where a job was going to be at when someone was working on it. And you could build tasks underneath that job. And
so it's kind of like letting go, but not quite letting go, because you can still almost see a dashboard of what they're up to. Yeah.
100%. So it has a Kanban. It's a bit like a Gantt chart that will show you all the jobs that are in the system, who they're assigned to, when they're due, and how far they've progressed. So the control freak in me didn't have to let complete go of everything. I could still have that oversight.
Yeah.
And what I did to, like you say, to find the time to actually build these things is really consuming.
Yeah.
Is actually built it with the people that were taking on the tasks.
Okay.
So you have to show them at some point. You can't just hand it over and say, here are all the tasks, away you go.
Yeah.
So I actually built the tasks. I created all of the jobs, so I knew what needed to be delivered, but I created the detail and the systems and the processes underneath those jobs with the new hire.
Yeah.
So as we showed them, we created all of those tasks. So it's a bit like that. Is it show one, teach one, do one?
Yeah.
So that's what we did. I showed them. We created all of the tasks. That was the teaching. And then they knew what had to be done and could go away and do it, and always had the job to go back to and be able to refer back and see how it was done. And we took screenshots. Sometimes we took Loom videos and embedded them in the tasks just to make that process easier. And we still do that now today, 7+ years later.
Wow.
Anytime we take on a new client, they get a job, they get the tasks created so that anybody in the office can work with that client if needed. So it's a big undertaking, but it's absolutely worth it. And you just have to think about, in your business or in anybody's business, what's the best way to impart that knowledge onto someone that they're going to be able to learn it and continue to deliver the work that's required.
Yeah. So you've identified what you needed. You found a tool to help you deliver it. But actually the way you delivered it is really interesting, because I think if you really were a control freak, you probably would have gone, this is how it has to be done. But actually you were quite willing to share your knowledge and bring the people on board and bring them along on the journey with you.
Yeah. And I think it helps people to understand as well if they're involved in the process.
That's exactly what I was going to ask, because I would assume that by being part of the process, they can ask the dumb questions live with you and then go, right, okay, now I understand why it has to go this way. Or you can question, this is how my brain works, but actually my team might work slightly differently, and it's a better process as a result of that.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that's, as the team has grown, that's certainly something that we've seen. We all actually will approach a parcel of work just a little bit differently. Yeah. And doesn't mean it's wrong. It's just that person's brain works a little bit differently. And if the outcome's the same, then that's okay. We're not trying to fit square pegs into round holes. So.
No, as long as the job gets achieved, right? So has that changed, that over those 7 years, has that changed the process at all? Have you adjusted as you've gone? Because as you would have gone from 1 to 2 and then 2 to 3.
Yeah. I think the main change, I guess, has been, rather than me sitting down and building a job with someone, quite often in the business, I take a new client on, bed them down, and then I'll transition them to another team member. Yeah. So I'm probably the one that's building the jobs now, but I can just hand that job over now because everybody knows how it flows, how it works, and what to take out of that process. And then they can edit it to suit their work systems and processes, or they can tailor it to themselves or personalize it to themselves. So it's as the team comes on and they're embedded in the business, you don't have to hold their hand as much in those building of the jobs and the tasks. You can just hand them over. So it's actually become easier, which is great.
Yeah, well, that's the point of having these tools, isn't it? Is that there's no point in making life harder for you. You've hired more people and you're doing more work. So it sounds like there's still a little bit of control freak there, because you're holding on to the clients and you're making sure they come in. I guess one of the questions that I think if I was the audience I'd be asking is, because it's a service-based business, do you feel like the business needs you always to be the face of it, or when you hand it to your staff, how are people reacting to being handed off?
Yeah, look, it has been a bit of a challenge, especially with my initial clients. Like, we've got some clients that we've had since day one, and sometimes there's been some resistance to be handed off, as you say, but they always know that I'm available, which has been comforting. And quite often, because of my skills and experience, and not all of the other team members have that same experience, I still do a lot of the higher level work for those clients. So even though their day-to-day is being managed by someone else, there's still those touch points with me. But yes, I have struggled to take myself away from being the face of the business. And that's something I'm working on, especially as I'd like to take some more time away from the business. You know, I've got an amazingly competent team. They're terrific, and I don't need to hold their hand. And they get on with it when I'm away. So there's no reason that they can't continue to do that. So, yeah.
I mean, it's difficult. I think anyone who, particularly in a service business, when you have that engagement with someone, that's who you're hiring, and you hope their team can hold up the rest of the stuff. I guess it will be that next period of growth for you in figuring out, is there another tool that you can engage that'll help with the bit that maybe the team is currently missing, or is there some skill sets that you can help deliver? Because obviously it's still in here. And that's from years of experience in doing it, and, you know, doing it at all the different levels that you've done it at, which we talked about. So it sounds like you, as a classic finance person, not that we believe in stereotypes.
Sometimes they fit.
You added process, and then we know finance people like their spreadsheets, and they don't like them to be coloured, because I'm a marketer, right? So I like the coloured cells. You don't like the coloured cells. But you've obviously been delivering this process, and you've been delivering it through expanding team for the best part of 7 years now. So that's pretty cool. I personally spent I reckon the first 10 years of my career believing process stopped progress. Basically, it got in the way, and it took me at least 10 years to realize that if you have a good process, you can use it to deliver things faster. It's just you've got to understand the process all the way through. Have you found times through all these growing pains where this process, just by having it, has actually helped you move a client through the process quickly and deliver something that they didn't expect, even though you got to tick all the boxes along the way?
Yeah, I think most of the work that we do is replicable across most industries and most clients. So it's not like we're starting from scratch every time. So as our client base has grown, and we've worked with different industries, we've been able to really, I guess, almost replicate that process. It's like a cookie cutter kind of tasks that sit underneath those businesses, depending on what industry they're in. So the process has certainly helped be able to take someone on and move them on to a senior bookkeeper really quickly. So that touch point from me at the start is much more lessened. And because I have that confidence that it can be handed over really quickly, when I'm meeting with a potential new client, they're really aware that I bring you into the business, and then you're going to be managed by one of the teams. So those processes have really helped to make that process a lot easier. So
it's crazy. Like, now when I look back at my younger self, I'm like, you're silly. But you can see, particularly because my word was fast moving consumer goods. So the quicker you can get on the shelf, the quicker you're going to get it sold, and then hopefully the quicker you'll get market share. But you also need to make sure you don't kill anyone, and that the legislation on the packs right, and all the rest of it. So having a process can actually help you help your clients more quickly, and help your team understand exactly what's required of them. So I think that's an excellent real life example of getting the right resources, so that's people and process, can strengthen and grow a business. And although it may not always run as smoothly as you'd hope, it sounds like even with your slight adjustments, and at the front making sure that you and your first employee are aligned on how things should happen, it's overcomeable, and you can get to a place where you're now 7 years later, haven't adjusted it that much, and it's working really well.
Yeah, that's
Can
right.
you give our audience more information how they can get hold of you and your services right now, and explain exactly what you do?
Yeah, so look, we're a boutique bookkeeping firm. We're actually in Adelaide in South Australia, in Australia, but we have staff interstate and also clients interstate. We, can work across the nation, really.
Yep.
But yeah, best place to get in contact really is probably on LinkedIn, which is, like you say, the online CV these days, or through our website, which is sgbalancesolutions.com.au, or just shoot me an email, sarah@sgbs.com.au. And yeah, we work with all sorts of different clients. We haven't really niched into an industry because we find doing the finances is doing the finances, really.
Yeah.
Obviously, every industry has their own idiosyncrasies, which we can manage. But yeah, we tailor our solutions to what a business needs. Some businesses want to keep certain parts of their processes in-house. Others just want us to manage it all.
Yeah.
We do pretty much everything in between.
So we'll make sure we add all of that to the podcast description, so if people are looking for it, they can find you. Thank you for your time and sharing your experience with our audience, Sarah. If you found this podcast valuable, make sure you subscribe and share it with your network. And if you have a business challenge you'd like me to cover, reach out on LinkedIn or at jcconsultancy.co. I'd love to hear your thoughts. What roadblocks are you facing right now?